Well, Colin finally got in there, didn't he?
Where does the pollen go?
Hi, I'm LadyJenevia, and on my channel I like to talk about entertainment media. If you are new here, hello, happy that you've stopped by.
Welcome, 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 welcome.
I have loads of other Bridgerton videos on my channel. There is a playlist displayed if you would like to go have a look and browse. Also, plenty of other videos about other entertainment fiction if you feel like exploring further. At the time of recording this video, it's a couple weeks ahead of the release of Bridgerton Season 3 Part 2, but they have still not provided critics with episodes 7 and 8, even though I was led to believe that they would be providing those before the release of Part 2. That's why this video is just going to be a review of episodes 5 and 6. We can do more videos about 7 and 8, about Part 2 as a chunk, or just the season at large after I have access to those episodes, but it's not clear just yet when I will be able to work on those videos. Normally, I might have been inclined to wait a bit longer in the hopes of being able to prepare a complete review for Part 2 for when the embargo lifts, but the problem is I'm going to be out of town during the Part 2 release. I'm leaving before June 13th, and I won't be back until after June 13th. This whole release model has been endlessly frustrating, and I want to make something clear to some of the regular viewers who have been following along more closely with my coverage of Season 3. I know that some of you don't like hearing me repeatedly say during my Part 1 coverage that I couldn't talk about Part 2, but I wasn't just putting those disclaimers in for your understanding as viewers. I was also putting those in so that anyone from Netflix that might be checking in on my coverage would be hearing the acknowledgement that I am in fact following their rules, even if I don't like them. I don't want to put other people's stories out there, but I will just say that I've heard some horror stories from other entertainment journalists of getting blacklisted by certain publicists. Not anything to do with Netflix, but the point is, you don't want to get on the bad side of the people who handle publicity ongoings for different studios and streaming platforms if you want to be able to keep access moving forward. And I'm not here to just talk about Season 3. I fully intend on covering future seasons of Bridgerton, so I'm not about to let any publicist think that I'm not following their guidelines of what you can share and when you can share it about Bridgerton Season 3. So, for these two episodes, 5 and 6, I'm going to mostly go through some of my commentary in sequential order. If I had a complete Part 2 to talk about, I might have sectioned it off going through things by characters, but since the organizational things are not being rolled out in the way that I would like for them to, I'm just going to do what little I can. So please keep in mind that the opinions in this video will not be able to take into consideration whatever revelations come in episodes 7 and 8. Episode 5 picks up right where we left off the end of episode 4, when Colin had just proposed to Penelope.
Your family will see me.
For God's sake, Penelope Featherington, are you going to marry me or not?
And all of these Dutch tilts they're using for Penelope's point of view when coming into the house, I won't say that they were the wrong choice, but more so symptomatic of the problems I have with the way that they've handled the Lady Whistledown storyline in Season 3, and I suppose by extension, the 2 seasons that came beforehand. This engagement should be a fully celebratory occasion. We are all here to see Colin and Penelope's love story. This should be a happy occasion. You finally have the main couple of the season getting engaged, but instead, these Dutch tilts make the audience feel unsettled. That's typically what they're used for. Dutch tilts are not just used for horror filmmaking, but it can at times invoke those vibes. Like in Season 2 when they were doing the flashback of Violet giving birth to Hyacinth, and it was an extremely difficult birth, and Anthony was being asked to decide whether or not the priority should be to save Violet or the baby. That was a horrific situation, so the Dutch tilts made sense. And now, unfortunately, Dutch tilts make sense for a pollen engagement, when that is the absolute last type of vibe I wanted to see for the couple of the season when they finally got engaged. TLDR is that I wish they had swapped the timeline for these two big cliffhangers. I wish that the cliffhanger at the end of episode 4 had been Colin discovering that Penelope is Lady Whistledown, and then the engagement could have happened somewhere around the end of episode 6. There is too much baggage that had been piled onto this Lady Whistledown storyline that even though at the time of recording this video, when I have not been able to watch episodes 7 and 8 just yet, I don't know if I could be satisfied with you only having 2 episodes to have them talk through all of that and leave me fully satisfied with the resolution of the storyline. And then you have Eloise coming through with the whole, until he knows the real you, he cannot possibly love you, which, okay, the delivery might seem harsh, but there is a small element of truth there where it's not just that you're depriving Penelope of fully experiencing the romantic bliss that she's been wanting, because she still has this Lady Whistledown secret looming over her relationship with Colin. You are also depriving the audience of that catharsis of letting Colin know what's really going on and having them actually talk things out. I would really like for the show to completely throw away this half and half model because I think all of us can agree that it's been garbage and just switch to weekly episodic releases. Moreover, make it to where each episode will end with some sort of cliffhanger to keep the more casual viewers on the hook and coming back the next week to see what happens, but don't make every cliffhanger something that feels, emotionally speaking, like life and death stakes. That's not what romance girlies watch Regency romances for. Regency romances are about banter and vibes. They're not about these life and death circumstances. Occasionally something very big will pop up, but it doesn't frequently feel like this. Benedict finds out about Colin's engagement in a Lady Whistledown announcement, and as a Benedict girly, I cannot overstate enough how much I hated seeing that. He should be at home with his family. The show is called Bridgerton. I don't care about this woman he's having a fling with. This storyline was doing absolutely nothing for me. It doesn't give him anything interesting or meaningful to play for basically 6 episodes, and we're being deprived of these quality family moments.
I hate to break it to you, but I'm gonna.
I kid you not, I like the side argument Benedict has with Gregory and Hyacinth over who will get which macaroon more than I did literally everything I've seen for Benedict with this fling for the first 6 episodes of an 8-episode season. Kate and Anthony are coming home and they're having a baby.
Bit of foreplay, twinkle in the eye. The deed, pregnancy.
TLDR, I despise the choice to make them want to keep it secret. That makes no sense. It doesn't feel in character for either one of them. It feels like you drag that out purely so that it could be announced during a messy time, which was when Cressida was gearing up to lie and claim that she's Lady Whistledown. So you're telling me that once again, a mean-spirited character is more important to try to paint as nuanced instead of letting your one Asian lead character on this show shine and have their moment in the spotlight. Okay. You're not doing yourself any favors in the court of public opinion on Desi Twitter, and I, for one, would never want to incur the wrath of Desi Twitter. I want to still be invited over for dinner. I recently had my birthday and went out for some Indian food, and I had some chicken tikka masala and some yellow dal tadka. It was spicy and delicious. I did have to ask them to make it spicy, though, because the last time we had gone there, it felt like they had toned down their recipes for certain clientele.
He only circles white people.
Colin tells Anthony and Benedict when they're talking about the engagement, I have known her a very long time, and perhaps I have always felt something for her. My only foolishness this time was not realizing it sooner. Now see, that's what I've been saying this whole time. You're foolish for not having figured this out sooner, Mr. No Thoughts Head Empty. You finally put a thought together, so I need one hand for the mic, so I'm just simply going to give you one of these.
I passed.
I do like the callbacks we get in this conversation, though. There's the callback of Benedict making fun of Anthony for wanting to duel Simon. Very funny thing for Benedict to do, and that was the energy I wanted to see more of in this season. I want to see Benedict having banter with his many siblings. He's very good at that.
I take it the two of you? No?
Do not look at me.
Have you ever visited a farm?
No.
And then we also have Anthony telling Colin to tell Penelope how he feels about her, and that was something I so appreciated because Anthony will have had a good amount of time by now to reflect on everything that went awry with his journey to get coupled up with Kate, and he will have realized that a lot of the mess and drama came from him not being forthright with his feelings. If he had been honest from the very beginning of how he felt about her, there wouldn't have been as much mess between them as there was. Daphne more or less told Anthony to tell Kate how she felt when she caught them alone together, and Anthony proceeded to run far away from those feelings. That is the Bridgerton family relationship continuity I've been looking for. I feel like I have to squint to find it this season, but once in a while it's there. And when it is, I will give those crumbs the flowers they deserve. Okay, so now we get to a moment I have been waiting to talk about for what feels like months at this point. Actually, it will have been months by the time you watch this. Months I have waited. Colin dragging Portia when he overhears her belittling and insulting Penelope. I want to give both Nicola and Luke, both Penelope and Colin, their flowers in this moment. So let me go one at a time. Number one, I've had to deal with a couple of extreme reactions to my coverage of season 3 from people who have been coming at my videos in bad faith and presuming that I don't like Colin when that has not been the problem at all. The problem is this half-half review embargo. The fact that not even social sentiment was permitted for part 2, that meant that I was not allowed to talk about or even hint at what happens in part 2 while I was talking about season 3 up until right now at this very moment. The fact that they added this whole angle of Colin pretending to be a
You keep calling me a fuckboy like it's an insult? I own that shit.
Scenes that literally nobody asked for. Nobody wanted it. No thank you. Take it back. Return it to sender. Colin sticks up for Penelope. So this is a huge redemption moment for him. I don't care one single bit about that balloon scene. This is what I cared about. This is what I wanted to see from Colin. Now that this is finally out, I can expand more on my thoughts. I did not like Anthony Bridgerton in season 1. I found him to be quite insufferable, as a matter of fact. And then in season 2, he completely won me over, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching him fall madly in love with Kate. So even though I was poking fun at Colin purely for my amusement, I was always open to the idea of him winning me over in season 3 when it's his turn to be the leading man. But then you set reviewers up, and you set Colin Bridgerton up, and Luke Newton too, while we're at it, to take the brunt of all this intense fan energy because of a lack of context. I fully understand the idea of you putting a scene like this on a do not reveal list if you were going to do things properly and let reviewers give a general overview review of season 3 before it came out. This is a good scene, and you don't want to spoil the details of it before the general audience can see it. I fully understand that. However, if you had fixed the terms and conditions of your review embargoes and do not reveals, I would have been able to say something like, Colin does get to a point of redeeming himself to many of the naysayers of the character. Colin gets to reach a place of showing his growth and maturity to become a more compelling romantic lead. I could have said any number of things like that. But instead, you left reviewers like myself stuck in the trenches of having to repeatedly say, I can't say more right now because I'm under embargo. I can't give a complete opinion of Pauline's love story because I'm under embargo. I kid you not. I had a comment of someone asking me, I forget on which video this was, do you even like Colin? And I responded directly to them by saying that I could not give a complete opinion yet because I was under embargo. And to give credit where it's due, that commenter was very nice and they were very understanding about that once I responded to them. But this is exactly what I was talking about. You know, I made a comparison earlier on in my coverage of season 3 to Pride and Prejudice when I was explaining how horrible this half-half format is. Part of the reason for making that comparison is that Pride and Prejudice is a very popular and well-known work of fiction, so it makes the reference presumably more likely to be accessible to whomever watches this review. But the more I reflected on that comparison, the more I realized that it was even more fitting than I first thought. Just think about how in Pride and Prejudice, Mr. Darcy makes a fairly horrible impression on Elizabeth Bennet for basically the first half of the story. She's also told some lies about him by Mr. Wickham, so that certainly didn't help, but all of that is why she rejects his proposal that happens midway through the story. The back half of the story is about him working to redeem himself in her eyes, making amends for his wrongdoings, and also for Elizabeth to learn that maybe she was a bit too hasty in her judgments towards him.
You're not as vile as I thought you were.
The casual audience might not realize the more subtle moments of Mr. Darcy already being appealing in his own way for the first half of the story, or maybe they don't appreciate them as much until they get to see the full story and then they go back and watch everything in full. So imagine if you were trying like hell to convince people that Mr. Darcy was a good love interest, one of the most iconic in all of romantic fiction as a matter of fact, but you were not allowed to talk about the second half of the story. I am not saying that Colin Bridgerton is on the level of Mr. Darcy, but the general principle of the matter should make sense. You didn't let us talk at all, even in the most broad strokes terms, of Colin really starting to get himself together, to stick up for Penelope, to really woo her the way we want to see him woo her, telling her that he loves her, all of these things that make him significantly more appealing as a romantic lead. And I think that that format is just downright horrible. Now remember when I say this, there are obviously much bigger problems in the world than the questionable handling of the release of a fantastical escapist romance show. Donation links as always for Palestine are in the description box. You can also stream HIND'S HALL by MACKLEMORE, as proceeds from that song will be going to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. Now, Penelope's reactions in these scenes, I am not exaggerating when I say this is my favorite acting from Nicola Coughlan in all of episodes 1 through 6. The look on her face when Colin is sticking up for Penelope against Portia and saying that he proposed out of love, and then after this, when they're at Colin's house, that's going to be his and Penelope's house, when she tells him, no one has ever stood up for me like that, all I could think was, come on, acting. And Netflix forbade me from speaking about that. I fully understand the desire to not have everything revealed before it's aired, and that's valid. However, what harm is there from allowing critics to say something like, Nicola Coughlan's acting shines especially bright during some emotional moments in episode 5? What does that give away? nothing. It hypes up the material. And yes, this episode is when you get the first consummation for Colin and Penelope, but I am not being hyperbolic when I say that the thing I most wanted to talk about was that whole sequence of Colin finally standing up for Penelope and her telling him what that meant to her. I'm not saying the first hookup was bad. I'm just saying that if you force me to do a ranking, that's the part I would rank higher. Stand up for your lady. She's been bullied her entire life by her family. It's about time that someone else stands up for her. And sure, you can make the argument that you want to see her stand up for herself, but I just don't want her to fight that fight alone. It's a romance story. They should support each other wherever it is that they need that support. Now, on a lighter note, I absolutely adore Kate's dress we saw with the fusion of Indian fashion, making a dress that's part Regency and part sari. Exactly. Kate is really out here serving beauty and culture like no one else can.
It's fashion? Is it wait, but is it fashion?
Maybe if corporate would hurry up and greenlight an Edwina spinoff, we could get more iconic cultural fusion fashion like this, but that's a conversation for another day. I really loved the conversation between Kate and Eloise, though. I think it's absurd that they took this long to have more of them interacting with one another, considering how Eloise made it clear all the way back in season 2 that she loved the idea of having Kate around the Bridgerton family.
What about Miss Edwina's sister?
What about her?
Will she come to live with us too?
Oh, I do hope so. It would be a boon to have another intelligent woman in the house.
To make a long story short, this was a window into another world where Eloise could have had the storyline that I actually wanted to see her have in this season. Given the fallout she had from having her reputation dragged through the mud by the Lady Whistledown storyline, I really would have liked to watch her find solace with her family. That is something that's so special and unique to a lot of what we see in the Bridgerton world. There is another level of love and camaraderie in this family that we don't get anywhere else, and I'm irked by how little of a priority it's been this season. Eloise's scenes should have been predominantly with different members of her family.
The world is not exactly welcoming to an unmarried woman. There seems to be no place in society for us except at the edge of things.
That rather seems to be society's flaw, not a woman's.
Indeed it does.
Benedict's entire character building for seasons 1 and 2 has been him doing emotional labor for several members of his family, and yet somehow now when Eloise is in DEFCON 1 crisis mode, he's nowhere to be found to spend time with her. Okay, it gives the impression like you don't care about the relationship continuity for the Bridgerton family on a show that's called Bridgerton. Francesca and John's courting is going well. He says that he would rather be woken up early by her piano playing than he would his valet. And truly, I love that for both of them. Can we just take a moment to appreciate how Francesca was really acting like she didn't care about finding a love match. She didn't have that expectation. And now she's over here smiling, giggling, kicking her feet over anything and everything to do with John. And you know what? I love that for her. I know she's supposed to have a different love interest in her book, and I am curious to see if we will meet him either in episode 7 or 8, or if they'll wait to do that next season. Either way, by the time you watch this video, you should know and I should know whether or not they've done that. I hate that Penelope was about to tell Colin the truth in the post-hookup list, and then they were interrupted. I just hate how much they dragged this out. Charlotte is in her feelings about Francesca not wanting her to play matchmaker because she found her own love match without Charlotte's help, because what is she even there for? This monarch had the gall to call John mediocre?
Nah, yo, hold my poodle. Hold my poodle.
In this household, we respect John Sterling, even if he doesn't have a Scottish accent the way that I would have liked to hear him have.
Do you know what that was? That was the Scottish vacuum of charm. Yeah, that was...
Portia has decided to stand up for Penelope now that she's secured a good match and I guess is thus worthy of being treated like a human being.
Good morning, Mum. How are you?
Are you engaged yet?
Well, not since you asked last night, no.
And you know what? I can't believe how low we've sunk. Truly, we are the Titanic, because now I'm having to stand up for Penelope's sisters. They are flabbergasted by Portia's behavior, and they're completely right. Portia, you don't get to walk in here and scold your daughters for behaving exactly how you taught them to. They learned that behavior of picking on Penelope from you. I don't condone Prudence and Philippa's behavior of continuing to pick on Penelope, but I do condone them being gooped that their mother is now siding with Penelope all of a sudden. If this show spent less time trying to redeem mean-spirited villains and more time on the Bridgerton family dynamics, the vibes would be vastly superior. I know we're mostly all on the same page that the show absolutely should have shown us the flashback meet cute for Colin and Penelope with the horse and the mud puddle, but do you know what's another flashback I would have liked to see? I would have loved to see them do a quick little something to the first time Colin ever called Penelope pen. Because we have to remember, this is a very formal place. People are always referring to each other by their surnames. But Colin has been calling her Pen for a while now. Book Penelope remembered the exact day of the week it was when she first met Colin, which was so corny in a way that was really silly and fun to read. The show could have put their own spin on things by showing us, wow, Penelope has been so deeply in love with Colin that she remembers the first time he ever called her Pen. Because that's not just Colin throwing away the general formality of the social decorum of the time period. That's him giving her a nickname. Eloise is being messy at the engagement party. She's threatening to expose Penelope's secret because the show was dragging out this Lady Whistledown reveal. It's not as if the show's audience wants to see Colin and Penelope happy in love without this gloomy cloud overshadowing their romantic vibes. I don't want to see this drama. I want to see Colin and Penelope being in love and talking about writing, being united to stand against the impending threat of the villain of the season trying to ruin their love. That's what happened in the book anyway. The guests are going to play a game of charades all while the girls are fighting, so I'm sure that will go well. Fuckboy. And why exactly are we playing charades? I thought we already decided in 1982 that we don't want to play charades and pretty lies. And can someone tell me if grown adults actually play these games at parties? Is that really how folks are passing the time?
This is a white people's game. Y'all spend so much time trying to trick each other. Y'all got so much time on your hands. Just say the word.
Kate and Anthony are actually in this episode, so I do want to point out a couple of things involving them. One, when Anthony is in the carriage with Kate and he's talking about how excited he is about her being pregnant and he's yelling, that felt so in character. Him keeping it quiet, terrible writing choice. Throw it in the bin. Anthony Bridgerton has no chill, especially about Kate. He might be less stressed out and agitated now that he's in love and he's wifed up the love of his life, but this man is ridiculous, and that's why we love him. Moreover, he's a feral sports person, so I love that he was doing the absolute most during this trivia game. He keeps shouting out answers. Are they right? Nope, but he's still going to try. I also love how when he was explaining the game, he said something about how the genius will reveal his or herself. Ladies and gentle thems, that sure feels like a callback to indicate character growth from season 2. Look at how far we've come from ladies do not hunt.
Ladies do not hunt.
Do not or are not allowed to.
I am set.
Until now, where he's saying geniuses can also be women. In Regency settings, this does qualify as growth. Eloise and Penelope winning these riddles, I really wanted more of this. Even if they were in a disagreement after the falling out they had in the season 2 finale, I wanted to see them working through things. Even if we had them still on the outs for a couple of episodes, having scenes of them acting with each other, they're just so good together, and we were robbed of that this season. Violet stares at Francesca when she's staring at John telling the mud story, and that actually got me. I got emotional. You can see that Violet is seeing that love has finally happened, albeit a more quiet, understated version of love compared to her own love match with Edmund, as well as the many love matches that her children have gotten thus far. But I really enjoyed this while it lasted anyway. Just wait, we will get to it. Benedict says the line, I would argue Whistledown is the vulgar one, though the ton can do with a little vulgarity. So true, Benedict, and I love you for saying that. But the end of this episode just bothered me so much as a sort of culmination of many of the things that I didn't like about the execution of certain storylines. You made Kate and Anthony wait to announce their pregnancy for no good reason. And now when they finally start to say something, they're interrupted by Cressida of all people. Absolutely not. Throw that story idea in the bin.
Oh! No! No!
The end of this episode feels like a horror film because of all this impending doom. We should be overjoyed that Colin and Penelope are celebrating their engagement, and instead we are still watching her suffer. Suffering so much that she passes out because Colin still doesn't know that she's Lady Whistledown. Okay, throw it in the bin. You can keep the storyline of Cressida pretending to be Lady Whistledown because that was in fact in the book, but stop giving this all this extra airtime that doesn't need to be there. You only have 8 episodes. I don't need a sob story trying to justify her behavior. I don't care.
I saw that going differently in my mind.
If you had 12 or 13 episodes, I would have been more on board with the idea of fleshing out more characters, including her, because it's not a bad story idea. It's just bad when you only have 8 episodes, and we should be spending more time with Colin and Penelope talking to each other, because Colin should already know by now that she's Lady Whistledown, and they should be talking things out, working through their relationship, so that when they're engaged, they're fully informed in their decision-making of choosing one another as a love match. Episode 6, Portia can finally see that Penelope and Colin are in fact a love match. Penelope gets a ring, but the ink stains are on her hand, and this is something that I did like. I liked that they were planting these small details to build up to Colin being able to finally learn that Penelope is Lady Whistledown. There are the ink stains, mentions about how well she writes, which he would know because they've written many, many, many letters to each other. And Colin says that he thought Lady Whistledown would be someone more clever than Cressida. The only thing I don't like about this storyline, which I've already said ad nauseum, is that this whole exchange we're watching should have been happening far before episode 6. I'm thinking either episode 3 or 4. I would have much preferred for the part 1 cliffhanger to be Colin learning that Penelope is Lady Whistledown. We have another scene of Cressida's home life, and she and her mother are wearing these overly enormous collars that they just look a bit...
What's that collar for? Is that to keep him from licking his stitches?
Cressida's father threatens to send her to Wales, and what exactly is wrong with Wales? How about you keep the name of Wales out of your mouth?
When the English come knocking on our door, let's give them some sugar, boys! Let's give them some Welsh sugar!
Francesca shares that she and John are engaged, and it's just so ridiculously cute. I love that for them. Am I ready to be emotionally devastated by John not being her main love interest for her love story? No. Don't tell me the details. All I know is a really basic broad premise, which is that John's not her main love interest. That's about all I know, and I don't want to know any further details until we get to whenever her season is. I don't know what order they're going to go in. A lot of people are speculating that Benedict is season 4. So if that's the case, I have to wonder whether or not Francesca is season 5 or 6, since we've already seen that going out of order is an option to the people in charge of things. I would like to know how long we're going to have with John on the show, though, since I think he's really adorable with her, and even if we can't have them together forever, I would like to make the most of however many episodes we will be able to have with him. Come on. Him struggling to make himself heard over the very loud Bridgerton family, that was pure comedy, and I want to see more of that. And now I want to give a giant bouquet of flowers to Claudia, because her acting when Eloise is with Colin and realizing how deeply in love with Penelope he is and how she doesn't want to ruin Colin's happiness, this is yet another reason why I wholeheartedly disagree with the decision based on episodes 1 through 6 to not have more of Eloise's scenes be with her family. We have years of buildup and investment in these characters and their relationships with one another, and now you want to throw her off somewhere else instead of deepening this exploration of how these family members look after one another. Absolutely not.
Flames on the side of my face.
And if this isn't clear already, some of my opinions on certain characters or storylines might change once I've been able to watch episodes 7 and 8, but I simply don't have the option to wait around and hope that Netflix will follow through on what they said and provide the full season in time for me to prepare my coverage in advance. If they give the screeners far enough in advance for me to make another video covering episodes 7 and 8 before I go out of town, then I'm assuming I will prep that video to publish not very long after this one is released. But at the time of recording this video, I cannot give you a clear answer since I'm not being given clear answers. That's how things are. Fun, isn't it?
Can you maybe try to, look like you're having fun?
What's the point of providing partial access to critics to prep coverage if you're not going to give them a complete love story to discuss? Great question. I would love an answer to that. I don't like the show trying to set up a bunch of miscellaneous storylines and subplots instead of developing the things that are already in motion. The emotional weight and investment that we have in the Bridgerton family is simply unmatched compared to the other subplots. That's just the truth of things. It should be the Bridgerton family and then the love interest of whomever is the main Bridgerton for that particular season, and then the people in the immediate orbit of that love interest. And actually, I don't have a convenient place to bring this in, so I'm just going to talk about this right now. I've seen a lot of complaints in my comments from book readers that the show did not have the relationship between Lady Danbury and Penelope that was present in the book, and it was regarded by many as a high point of the book, and I agree completely. I think there would have been room to do some very interesting storytelling if they had put that in the show, where Violet could be advising Colin to help him get it together and find love, and Lady Danbury could decide to help Penelope out, similar to what she did in the book. And then we could also have some scenes of Violet and Lady Danbury, who are friends, and they could talk through this similar position that they're in of trying to help the younger generation find happiness and love. And it would be a way of putting forth this vibe of community. Lady Danbury was willing to help out the Sharmas, who were completely new characters to the show. You think she wouldn't be willing to help out Penelope, who's been around and they've been in each other's orbit for all that that time. I also would have loved the idea of Lady Danbury taking it upon herself to go, you know what? People see her as a wallflower, as an underdog, and I'm going to help her show everyone that it doesn't matter if this is her 3rd season. She can do this, and all of you are wrong with your judgmental assumptions. Also, in the book, Lady Danbury thinks it's really obvious that Penelope is in love with Colin, and she roasts Colin for not doing something about it. And I, for one, think that was fabulous. Eloise visits Penelope and tells her not to tell Colin and let Cressida take the credit because she can't be both a Bridgerton and Lady Whistledown, and Penelope is reluctant to do this because of how it is that she regards being Lady Whistledown. And I don't think this material is bad, but I think that it feels rushed and too superficial. The material is just not digging deep enough for my liking into how things are in the book as a point of comparison, where it's made so abundantly clear that Penelope is very protective of the Lady Whistledown project because she sees it as her life's work, because writing is something very important to Penelope. If they had had Eloise and Penelope start talking things out sooner this season, Penelope would have had more time to explain herself to Eloise, and by extension, the larger audience would get more of an understanding of Penelope as a character, Penelope as a writer, and they just could have done a lot more to flesh out how writing is something Colin and Penelope have in common, and it's something unique and specific to their love story that the other couples we've seen thus far, and presumably, hopefully we'll see after this, don't have. There's all this other drama that I just don't care to see, the way I care about wanting to see more of these details fleshed out to do with Penelope and Colin as individual characters, as well as their larger love story, which I was under the assumption was supposed to be the main focus for season 3. I did like how the scene ended, though, where Penelope says she has always wanted to be part of the Bridgerton family, and Eloise says that she always wanted to know Lady Whistledown, because it felt like something had shifted, where they're getting back on track towards reconciliation. I just wish we could have gotten to this point sooner in the season. Cressida is summoned to the palace, and I'm not one to condone English monarchy, but when Charlotte told her, "What have you observed in your life other than yourself?" maybe I laughed, because maybe that was a really funny read. I love how Violet is looking at Francesca lovingly once again when Francesca says that she and John want to start building their home together. So it would seem to be building momentum on her realizing that Francesca has found love and that she's happy for Francesca, but put a pin in this, because we will circle back to it. Portia asks Penelope, "What dreams?" And this is once again where I find myself frustrated that I wish the show had done more to fully flesh out how and why Penelope became Lady Whistledown and what writing means to her. This is something that's far more developed in the book than how it is presented in episodes 1 through 6. Now, if they do a bunch of things to fix the storyline in episodes 7 and 8, I'm sorry that I can't talk about that right now, but I'm not going to risk not having anything ready to publish when the Part 2 embargo lifts. I do think there's room for hardcore viewers and book readers to look through the show with a fine-tooth comb and pull deeper readings of the material, but I wanted the show to make things very clear for the general audience who doesn't analyze fiction in that way. Penelope tells Colin that she's always loved him, but in secret, and again, this was such a sweet scene, and I wanted to be able to fully enjoy it, but they forced me to place an asterisk on it because Colin still doesn't know that she's Lady Whistledown. I'm not trying to be repetitive by continually bringing this up, but this is an issue. Every time we get a Colin and Penelope scene where you're not being given room to fully let go and immerse yourself in how cute they are together because you're still clenching and waiting for the reveal and all the fallout that will inevitably come from such a massive revelation that of course is going to blow up their happiness, even if they will reconcile eventually. In theory, you know that Colin and Penelope will end up together, but again, Bridgerton is a show I'm watching for vibes, and this really unpleasant secret just sours the vibes. This is a cute scene, and I don't want to have to think about anything else except for the fact that they're really sweet, and she's admitting how long she's loved him, and he's very apologetic about not getting it together sooner, and they're dancing, we're doing a little twirl, and instead, I'm worrying about dramatic fallout. Keep this scene, don't change a thing, except you put the scene after Colin knows that Penelope is Lady Whistledown. Cressida lashes out at Eloise when Eloise refuses to help her with her scheme, and Cressida lashing out. I mean, surprise, surprise, the mean girl is being mean. So why are you wasting precious airtime subjecting Eloise to the same fight that she already had with Penelope last season, someone who is actually her friend? So you wasted an entire season on this storyline just to repeat something you already did in the season 2 finale. Okay. Finch tells his wifey, I think you look as charming as a chocolate box, and truly he is one of the only people who is not bothering me while all this unnecessary drama and tension is ramping up. Francesca is feeling like her match isn't favored as much as Colin and Penelope's in the eyes of her mother. That will come back into play, so just put a pin in that. Penelope visits Madame Delacroix and reveals that she's going to let Cressida take credit for Lady Whistledown, and Madame Delacroix, not so subtly, tells her to not give up on something that is her passion and her creative outlet. And again, I find myself frustrated because why did we not have more scenes of these two talking with each other about the Lady Whistledown thing? You had this entire storyline in season 2 of bringing Madame Delacroix in on the whole Lady Whistledown operation. You gave Penelope a confidant, another woman who has to look after herself, who has a creative outlet and passion. Why would we not have these two having scenes together in Penelope's season to unpack more of the inner thoughts and feelings Penelope has about writing? Eventually, Colin is going to find out. So at that point, you could have them talking with each other about that. But before he finds out, why would you not let Penelope talk to her? You had those Benedict Eloise swing scenes. This could have been Penelope's version of that. But oh wait, the show is allergic to letting characters who have to work for a living actually exist and be fully fleshed out, nuanced characters in these spaces. Okay, that was my mistake, I forgot. Benedict gets invited to be in a throuple, but then he runs off, and although you might expect me to have a lot to say about this, I don't at the time of recording this when I don't have episodes 7 and 8. The only thing I would say is that I'm annoyed that you had Benedict more or less treading water just for this to come out of nowhere this late in the season. Now, I'm not opposed to exploring something that isn't as frequently seen in big mainstream works of fiction, such as a throuple, but I don't like when you throw a throuple storyline in last minute without doing more to build up to it. If you wanted to do a throuple, you should have started building up to that episodes ago, because this really felt like it came out of nowhere. I was waiting for some sort of introduction to Benedict's love interest, which, to be fair, that could still happen, but instead you drop this, and moreover, you don't provide the complete season, so I cannot even finish forming my opinion on this storyline, because for as quickly and abruptly as you brought this up this season, that's exactly how quickly and abruptly Benedict ran away from it. So what exactly do you want critics to say about the storyline? I don't even know what the story is, because you didn't build up to it, and now you won't let me see how it plays out. I really hope that they've gotten this terrible half-and-half experiment out of their system with season 3, because if they want to keep doing this for seasons 4 and however many seasons are going to come after that, of not letting us give a general overview review of the story, let alone watch the complete storylines for the main characters either, this is simply not helpful to setting the show up for success with prepping coverage in advance. How exactly do you want me to review this storyline? What do you want me to say about it? To the people? Do the folks in charge of this show not like Benedict? Is that what's happening here? Because his storyline was a whole lot of nothing. This is the first thing I've seen that feels eventful, and then I can't even fully decide whether I like the execution of that storyline because you won't give the complete season of screeners. The logic is nowhere to be found. Why would you spring that on him? Ask him some questions to get a feel for if that's something he would be interested in.
I hate when people do that, man. You know, it's like, dude, feel me out first. Ask some questions.
I'm so ready for this to be over, because keeping us stuck in limbo like this, it's not the vibe. Then we get this rift between Francesca and Violet, which I was not a fan of whatsoever. Why exactly did we get multiple scenes of Violet staring lovingly at Francesca, of Violet being so overcome with emotion about how happy she is to see that Francesca is so obviously deeply in love with John, and now all of a sudden Violet is skeptical about the match? It really feels like you sabotaged the natural momentum being built purely to set up the argument with Lady Danbury and her brother, which was another storyline I didn't like. I don't even want to discuss it in detail. That's how little I liked it. I don't want to unpack it. Too many storylines, too many characters, and it almost feels reckless to do, because the Bridgerton fandom is so large and active that when you overstuff the show to the point that not every character or storyline is getting their storyline optimized because you're trying to spin too many plates at once, you just end up upsetting more people, no matter who your favorite is. I've seen Paul and shippers unhappy because they keep cutting away to other storylines. I'm assuming you're going to upset Francesca and Violet fans for creating a needless fight between them when all of the vibes were going well before this, a fight that seems to only exist to set up another fight between Lady Danbury and her brother, which no one asked for that. What people are asking for is, where is the Lady Danbury and Penelope relationship from the book? The Benedict fans aren't happy that his story has been mostly a nothing burger for 70% of this season. The Cantony fans aren't happy because of how little they appear in this season, and I'm guessing they won't be happy that you had them waiting to announce their pregnancy because it doesn't feel in character for either one of them. Trim the story down. If you can't find a way to knock some sense into the corporate higher-ups, into giving the show more episodes per season, which it absolutely needs. Sense8 had 10 and 12 episodes. That worked really well to accommodate the full ensemble. Everyone's story in the Sense8 cluster in all the different countries they existed in felt fully cared for and tended to. 8 episodes is not enough. Okay, I know that was a lot of criticism, so let me say something nice. Finch's face when the Cowpers showed up to the ball, the way he lights up because he's ready to see the mess, that's why he's my person. He's so funny, he's ready to stay out of the mess but still be a spectator. And that's great. I love that for him. Colin decides he's going to publish his journals because he wants to prove himself as worthy to Penelope, who offers to edit them for him. And that is another clue that I enjoyed seeing. They were dropping these breadcrumbs for Colin to finally figure out that Penelope is Lady Whistledown. All of these things are good. I just needed them to happen sooner than the end of episode 6. Cressida makes a mess and a spectacle with her fake Lady Whistledown newsletter, and Eloise and Penelope finally seem to reconcile. My God, it took long enough. Eloise calls Cressida a viper and says she never should have befriended her. Yeah, we already knew that. And Eloise knew that in season 2 when she said she would rather die than be friends with Cressida Cowper. But somehow the people making the show forgot that detail when mapping out season 3. Okay.
Perhaps now you might stop spending time with insipid wallflowers all evening and refine your circle of friends. I may have no...
I would rather die.
Penelope explains to Eloise why she started Lady Whistledown, which, okay, again, good. But this should have happened at the beginning of season 3. They were already apart between seasons 2 and 3. As far as I'm concerned, that should have been the separation period. And then the season could have started with, okay, I've had some time to stew in my feelings, so now let's have a sit down and start talking things out. And that would have helped to inform the audience more about Penelope as a writer and all of what writing means to her. Moreover, Penelope says in this conversation that she should have been using Lady Whistledown to give a voice to the voiceless. And truly, there's no way for me to watch that now without going, oh, you mean like what she was already doing in the books the entire time. But somehow they want to make Penelope find a way to do a 180 when there's only 2 episodes left. This is the thing. Looking back on not only episodes 1 through 6 of season 3, but also seasons 1 and 2, it just feels like they really set Penelope up in a bad way to create a negative impression to a certain section of the general audience. I am not talking about the more engaged audience that is active in fandom communities, people who are going to write and read long analyses of the material. Those people can, of course, find more nuance and shades of gray. I'm not concerned about them. I'm talking about the casual audience. We can't be all that surprised when some of those people are watching the show and just thinking, oh, Penelope's kind of mean. Why is she writing all that about her friend instead of just telling her friend the truth? Let Eloise have a say in whether or not she wants to be put on blast publicly to stop the queen from thinking she's Lady Whistledown. I'm not interested in watching a Regency set romance to ponder the moral ethics of the main couple. I just want to see romantic vibes and banter. Every single time I'm enjoying the Paulin romance, they're just hanging out and talking to each other. I don't need this overly dramatized baggage weighing down the vibes. All of their cute moments is just them talking.
I should like to see your skills as they are first.
But I have none.
I love that you want to work outside with me.
Colin catches Penelope leaving the printing shop, and now he knows. But again, they have not provided the complete season at the time of recording this. So ultimately, I found myself, when prepping my coverage to fill the many weeks that made up the gap between parts 1 and 2, I couldn't even share or have the thought in my head of, oh, well, ultimately, I like how they wrapped up the ending. The genre is romance. First and foremost, the main incentive to watch Bridgerton is to watch a couple fall in love, but you aren't going to let me know if they stuck the landing. And again, when I'm prepping this video early, far ahead of when this video will actually be published, I don't know if I like the ending or not. Maybe I will love it. Maybe I will go, well, it was a rough ride, but we got there in the end and it was fine. If you had left reviewers with the impression of, and so Colin and Penelope got married and they're happy in love, instead of all these hours of dramatic tension, Dutch tilts, threats of secrets being exposed. Don't you think the vibes of the coverage would have been different if we weren't left on the note of all that drama and tension and now Colin found out and just stew in that for potentially 2 months, depending on when they will or will not provide screeners for the last 2 episodes? Just some food for thought. I'm assuming it will be a cute ending. Why wouldn't it be? We know they're going to get married and get together in the end, but you won't let me see that when I'm prepping coverage?
Well, I will go and leave you to it.
Oh, I will go.